are a couple players that are hitting the market this year that your team better not sign.
I don't care if we're going to name him number one receiver or not, but I love the thought of adding OBJ to Mac Jones' third year.
One bad contract for an underperforming star, and a team can be hamstrung for years to come. Let's take a look at 10 NFL free agents who will ruin your favorite team's season. Starting off with Jadeveon Clowney, who played his last 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, but is set to hit the open market this offseason. The former number 1 overall pick is no stranger to such change. In fact, assuming he doesn't return to Cleveland, which considering his comments earlier in the year seem extremely unlikely, Clowney will be joining his 5th different team in 6 years, which, for a player with his natural talent, is pretty insane. And honestly, a little bit telling. Because at 6 foot 6 inches and 260 plus pounds of pure muscle and all the athleticism that one could want, and Clowney is literally built like a prototype in a lab designed specifically to wreck games and torture opposing quarterbacks. Unfortunately, Jadeveon seems to lack the intangibles needed to really capitalize on all of his natural talent. It isn't just that his counting numbers have been somewhat pedestrian compared to his ability, but also he seems unable to have the macro-level effect on an organization that you would expect. And that's just best case scenario, because we have seen multiple instances in which Clowney has found a way to turn himself into a distraction that ultimately takes away from the team's success. Think about his time in Cleveland. When he signed with the Browns in 2021, he was supposed to be that extra piece that put them over the top. Cleveland was coming off its first playoff appearance in eons, and he was going to be playing across from Myles Garrett, another premier edge rusher. He was able to accrue 9 sacks, but the team struggled, and really, he never had the impact that Cleveland hoped that he would, especially considering all the attention that Garrett drew from opposing linemen. Then, to make matters worse, in 2023, when it looked like the wheels had completely come off in Cleveland, Clowney decided to try and pile on and publicly threw shade not just at the organization, but at Garrett as well, by inferring that Cleveland specifically game planned for Garrett to pad his stats, rather than actually trying to win games. Which to me sounds like sour grapes. Between all that drama, the senseless penalties he catches, and on top of that, he's not exactly the most durable and certainly not the guy that is gonna gut it out through some pain for his team, this all just sort of adds up. I mean, there has to be a reason why a player with his physical skill set has been a part of so little team success and continues to find himself looking for a new home. This isn't a one-off. This is who Jadeveon Clowney is at this point. Yes, people can change and all that jazz, but until I see it for an extended period of time, I don't want him anywhere near my favorite team. And honestly, neither should you. The only one who should be really interested in Clowney is a high-end real estate agent. In many ways, Clowney is the defensive end equivalent of another fellow member of the 2014 NFL draft class, wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. There has never been a single doubt about Beckham's talent on the gridiron. When he is at his best, he was truly unguardable and capable of breaking off a massive catch at any moment. What made Beckham so special was that he didn't even need to run super aggressive routes. Eli Manning could just hit him on a slant across the middle of the field, and the next thing you knew, he was off to the races. But Beckham, even more so than Clowney, really struggled to control his emotions, often to the detriment of the team, either via unsportsmanlike penalties or by creating a distraction with his antics in the media. For a moment there was some hope that Odell was growing up. He was a clear contributor to the Rams during their Super Bowl run in 2022, and that had folks around the NFL buying into Beckham once again. But after his latest public outburst, well, it seems pretty clear that he is still the same old OBJ. Because forcing an entire flight full of strangers to deplane because you can't behave, well, that's not exactly a marker of maturity. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So for that reason, along with his lack of durability, teams should really steer clear of the Odell circus this offseason. OBJ isn't the only free agent wide receiver with somewhat diva tendencies that could absolutely wreck your favorite team's season. Though he doesn't seem to have quite the temper that Beckham does, Juju Smith-Schuster has certainly garnered a reputation for his ability to distract from what he and his teammates are doing on the field by his behavior off of it. I know it might be tempting after seeing a Super Bowl winning revival out of Smith-Schuster this year in Kansas City, but let's remember, that was Juju in the absolute best case scenario. He was playing in an offense designed and schemed by Andy Reid with a guy by the name of Patrick Mahomes throwing him the ball. And he was doing this in a contract year, coming off a stretch in Pittsburgh in which his stock could not have been lower. Juju had to get his act together this year, or he could have been on the brink of falling out of the league altogether. And you know what? Being honest, it still wasn't even that good of a season. He only recorded 78 catches for 933 yards and 3 touchdowns. It just so happened to end on the highest of notes. NFL GMs, please do not let recency bias blind you. He is not a bad guy by any stretch, but he's just not serious. He has a slew of interests off the field, like video games, which he's into legitimate partnerships for, and of course, TikTok. It is amazing to think what kind of player Juju Smith-Schuster might be had TikTok never been invented. That app is truly his drug. While he had quieted his online presence a little bit after the humbling couple of years he had in the Steel City, now that he's back on top, he is producing full-fledged TikTok dramas involving opposing NFL players. And thus, if you sign Juju Smith-Schuster, there is a huge possibility that his online antics create serious distractions in your locker room and put the season in peril. And that's assuming he even makes it to the regular season in one piece. Because there are some folks, cough cough AJ Brown, who would love to get their hands on the boisterous wideout. Speaking of hateable players, one of Juju's former teammates, quarterback Mason Rudolph, is also a free agent that you better hope your favorite team stays away from. Rudolph's case, however, shouldn't be quite as tempting to NFL GMs as Juju's. Mason hasn't shown he's anything more than a backup quarterback in every sense of the term. And I think that most front offices should be wise enough to steer clear of a player with Rudolph's history who might not exactly be welcomed into the locker room with open arms after what he was alleged to have done. That being said, the plague of quarterback desperation still does run rampant around the NFL, and I'm sure that some unfortunate organization will take a flyer on the former Oklahoma State standout. Sticking with the signal colors, Baker Mayfield may not be quite as hateable as Mason Rudolph, but it is clear that there are plenty of guys around the league that feel some type of way about the former first overall pick. Some of that resentment might have faded having watched Mayfield repeatedly eat humble pie time and time again over the past couple of years, but still, I don't see very many vets around the league being excited by the idea of bringing Mayfield into town, especially not for any significant amount of money. And that's where it could get really hairy. With the astronomical floor of quarterback contracts, Baker could still find himself being in the top percentage of the payroll wherever he signs. And I'm sure that won't rub guys the right way, particularly if he is never able to regain his 2024. Moving on, how about the 2022 Philadelphia Eagles running back Miles Sanders? I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want my favorite team touching this guy with a 10-foot pole. He had a solid rookie season in 2019 in which he ran for 818 yards, caught 50 passes for 509 yards, and totaled 6 touchdowns. But his next 2 seasons got progressively more pedestrian, until 2022, which just so happened to be his contract year. And he exploded for 1,269 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground while earning Pro Bowl honors for the first time in his career. It's almost like the Eagles realized that it was his contract year, and they probably weren't going to invest the money to re-sign him. So they may as well run him into the ground. After all, he has a whopping 259 rushing attempts. That is 80 more than his next highest season. So it's no wonder his production went up, as did his asking price and the mileage on his legs. Look, very little is certain in the NFL, but breaking open the piggy bank for a running back who overproduced in a contract year is as close to a cardinal sin as it gets. Actually, paying a running back being a mistake is not the only near certainty. So is the crushing disappointment that'll follow after you acquire Nelson Aguilar. I mean, just ask the legendary Philadelphian who caught a baby that was tossed out the window of a burning building.
My man just started throwing babies out the window. We was catching them. Unlike Aguilar.
Look, all miracles and jokes aside, Aguilar has never really lived up to the potential that he showed, which led to him being taken 20th overall in the 2015 draft by the Eagles. He's possessed elite athleticism, but the untimely drops that our hero alluded to have plagued him throughout his 8-year career. And the last 2 seasons in New England, well, it's only gotten worse. He went from 37 catches for 473 yards in 2021 to 31 catches for 362 yards in 2022. Assuming he leaves his Patriots days behind, Nelson will be on his 4th team, and I have a hard time believing that it'll be anything different from that same old song. Last but not least, we have Marcus Peters, the 30-year-old cornerback who, while being very accomplished, is a rather questionable signing at this point in his career. It's not just his age either. Peters has never stayed in the city for more than 3 years, and it always seems like by the time he's leaving, it is never on good terms. That same fiery personality that made him an all-pro cornerback has definitely created some issues for his staying power. His aggression was a double-edged sword on the field as well. For as many big plays as he made, he also collected more than his fair share of untimely penalties and blown coverages. And now that he's on the decline, well, your favorite team is better off just not rolling the dice on him at all. But which NFL free agent are you most worried about your favorite team potentially signing? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.